One. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Marvin Melendez. You're listening to another episode of All My Friends Talk, where I talk with all my creative artists, advocates, and just around amazing friends. Today is a super special treat. I am so excited for this episode. As someone who hosts his own podcast, I'm constantly listening to other podcasters to get ideas on what they're doing, just to improve the quality of this podcast. And on this episode, I have not one additional podcast representative, but I have two additional podcasts. I have Jonathan Toney from the Jonathan Toney podcast, and I have Felicia Parker from Human Entropy. What's up, guys? How are you?
Hey. Doing well, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. It's so good to have you guys on. I'm so pumped about this. I just want to dive right in, and we'll see where this goes. I've never done anything like this as far as having two separate people on, so it'll be an experiment for me and for the listeners. So we'll see how this goes. So I don't know if you we'll just start with you, Felicia, and then Jonathan, you can jump on with your answer in a second. But I'm curious because I know that both of you have real creative outlets outside of podcasting. Why did you guys start a podcast?
I think I started a podcast just because I have experienced so many meaningful conversations that inspire me just from the people I know or from people I don't really know but have been lucky enough to talk to. And so I don't know. I just feel like there have been multiple times where I've walked away from a conversation and been like, man, I know so many other people that needed to hear what that person just said. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that paired with being bored in quarantine, except that's not entirely true because I had planned to start a podcast a year ago before all this started. But
gotcha.
I don't know.
But quarantine just kicked it off for you?
Yeah, I actually was going to stupidly wait to start until all this Corona nonsense was over. But then my sister was like, no, now you need to do it because people will listen. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's actually a way better idea. So.
Yeah. What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, for me, so I actually have two podcasts, which is just sounds horrible coming out of my mouth. But yeah, I do that. The first one I did with a friend, and I listened to Conan O'Brien's podcast, and it's just he had an episode specifically with Bill Hader, and I ended that episode. I was like, I gotta do this. Like they just were having too much fun, and so I texted my friend Sam, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna do a podcast. And he's like, oh, I want in. I'm like, all right, that's fine. And so we just kind of started doing it together and thought we'd get maybe 3 episodes in or something and quit. But we just hit our 45th episode, which is pretty cool. And we do one a week. Yeah, it's just a miracle. It's still going. Honestly, we're just like, this is amazing. We're still doing it. But I kind of wanted to take that a little bit deeper. And it just didn't fit our format right because it's just complete nonsense. And the goal of that one is just comedy and just to be funny conversations. But it's similar to Felicia. I just knew some cool people and they had cool stories. And so I wanted to take that a little bit deeper and hopefully cause people to kind of hear a story they wouldn't otherwise hear. Because I think people are so quick to read bullet points or read a headline and think they know everything about a situation. So the goal of this other podcast is kind of to know the why behind the what. Okay, this is what you've seen people do. Well, why? Why do they feel like that way? Or what's going on? So that's kind of the goal of that. And then hopefully to, have some fun with it as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I listen to both of your podcasts. And I think something that the three of us have in common is that, you have a co-host on one podcast, but then you have a separate podcast where it's just you and another person. Mm-hmm. Felicia, you have a podcast where it's you and or it's you and you bring in a guest. And every podcast I do, it's just me and a guest. But even though there's a very similar vein, the similar ways and ideas to do this, I feel like all three of us have I was even thinking about this today. There's one person I saw on social media. I was like, oh, I wonder if I should invite them to the podcast. I was like, oh, but I don't feel like they fit the theme. Even though it's just having a conversation with someone, there's still an overall theme that I have on my podcast. And I was like, oh, but they don't really fit. Oh, but I wonder if her and Felicia ever met. I thought this today. I was like, I bet she would fit in really well on her podcast, right? And then I even thought the same thing on like I had a conversation. I had Robbie Johnson, who's a pastor in Gainesville, Florida, and he really didn't fit the mold for like the episodes, but he was great. But even then, I was thinking like, oh man, like I bet like him and Jonathan Tony would have had this conversation really, really well because I felt like it just fit the overall theme. Are you intentional with the themes of your podcast?
Do you want to answer first since I went first last time?
Sure, we'll alternate. I like this stuff. Yeah, definitely. With the one with Sam, it's complete nonsense. We don't really plan much and just kind of we're friends, and so we just follow the conversation. Honestly, I'm surprised anybody likes it because it's just like the stupidest thing ever. But with the other one, yeah, I do put a lot of focus into what I want to talk about, what questions I want to know. And the biggest sticking point to me is that I have to find it interesting. If I feel like I'm just like pulling, I need something for this week. I don't know. What do? You work at something random that I don't care about. And it kind of sounds arrogant, but I'm also like, well, if I don't find this interesting, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell that to anybody else. And so those are the themes for me. It doesn't have a specific, like I talk about food or I talk about, whatever, but anything that's kind of near and dear to me or that I find interest in, I want to talk about that. So that's kind of the format I follow.
Yeah,
I agree. Because if it wouldn't interest you, then how could it interest the people that you think would like it? My answer is kind of similar. I feel like I don't have one specific topic, but I feel like the overall foundation for mine is just, I think that humans are really resilient. And so any resilience that I see in someone, despite what they have gone through, how maybe easy of a topic it is to talk about or how difficult of a topic it is to talk about, I would just like to highlight the resilience that they carry. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers it, but
no, it does. I mean, I feel like, especially for yours, you have to have like, you touch on really like difficult subjects. It seems like almost all your podcasts that I've heard like hit on some
mine?
really, yeah, on yours, like on Felicia's, like you touch on some like really like, I don't know, like emotional and sensitive subjects. Like when you're planning out your questions, are you aware of that?
Yes and no. So the questions are half spontaneous, half planned. So I definitely let them know what topics I imagine will surface based on our conversation in advance, but I don't know. I also let them know if there's anything that they end up saying and they want me to take it out later, I can do that. So, but yeah, they are really emotional and they're about to get really political, which I've never done before. I'm like, I don't know who I am in 2020, but it's about to get not even like persuasively political, but just I'm actually going to talk about political social topics. And so that will be even more daring, I guess. But what was the question? What did you just ask me?
I mean, I think I was more interested. Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember. That was like a spontaneous question that I just kind of came up with. But I think I was just curious, like as far as like when you go towards like a sensitive topic, where you go, like, are you ever worried that like you're like maybe diving into someone's personal life a little bit too much on the podcast, or like maybe this is a little bit too sensitive a question, like just on a personal basis?
Yes, and I think when you and I had talked last week, I think that is where my struggle to just ask a question up front plays into my podcast, because you were really kind and you told me that my interview skills are really good, which I needed to hear and I appreciate, but I do struggle with just coming right out and asking the question, just because I'm aware of how I don't know if sensitive is the right word, but I am pretty sensitive to my emotions and others, so I definitely don't want to be too invasive. But again, I think letting them know that I can cut stuff out, even if, I haven't experienced something where someone's like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't know. It's not a recipe that I have planned out or anything for what works and what doesn't, but you can definitely tell the vibe of whether or not it's a good idea to ask someone something a little bit more or not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do either one of you, like, and Jonathan, Tony, I think about your specific because you've had like a lot of comedy experience and like you're just kind of funny overall, but like I feel like that opens up the door for cancel culture a lot faster than any at least any other genre. Like if you're funny, you're talking like it's like I feel like people are gonna be like, why are you making a joke about that? Or Felicia, if you're going into the political realm, it's like, oh, so now you're siding with so and so. You know, like do you guys worry about like the cancel culture aspect of podcasting?
That's a good question. Yes, absolutely. Because I don't feel like I have a stake in anywhere. And like, if I get canceled for doing my podcast that I make no money on, like that's gonna really screw up my life. Versus like if I have a show on HBO and I'm already a millionaire, they cancel me, you probably bounce around to another network. It sucks. So you do have to be cognizant of that while you work your day job because you're like, I can't just go out here
Oh
and
my
say anything I
gosh.
want to say, because that stuff trickles up, so you have to be very clear on what you're saying, and I think you got to be clear on what you're not saying. And so Sam and I did a podcast about the protests going on. We're like, we got to talk about this. I can't ignore it. And I did a disclaimer at the beginning because our conversation again wasn't planned, and so we kind of said some stuff, and we finished it. We edit ours as well, which doesn't sound like we do, but I do. I was just like, "Are you cool with what you said?" And we sent it to a couple people. They're like, "I kind of wasn't sure what your point was on this," or Sam had said something like off the cuff that sounded different, and so I just did a disclaimer at the very beginning. I'm like, "You're going to hear two guys have a conversation. This is where we stand," because I'm okay with getting backlash if it's something I believe in. And so I've interviewed some people about Black Lives Matter and our friend Corinne Abraham specifically about
Yeah.
being an African American woman, like what, and I'm okay with that. And there's people, and I've also written blogs, and people don't like it. They've called me a racist and a bigot, and
Wait, really?
it's, oh yeah, they don't do it publicly sometimes, and some people do it publicly. And it doesn't feel good. I'm not this type of person that likes to just debate people. I don't like arguing online. I can't do any of that stuff very well either. And so it does hurt me, but I kind of count the cost. I'm like, this is a statement I want to make, and I'm willing to get some pushback on this. And again, this comes back to your point. If I find it interesting and if I'm convicted by it, if I believe in it. So I'm okay saying that, yeah, I don't think black people should be shot in the street when they're unarmed. I don't think, some of this stuff isn't that controversial to me. And so Felicia, I'm interested in your move into like the political realm, because I'm feeling that as well too. As comedy background, kind of just want to be like, I just make everybody laugh. I don't worry about it. But like, it's kind of getting unavoidable now, and staying true to my convictions, staying true to what I think we got to talk about. You'll never see me probably blowing up Twitter with every trending article of whoever, but when it's a real life issue that affects friends of mine, that affects my own life, I feel like it'd be a disservice to just kind of be intentionally blind to it. And so that's the kind of stuff I wrestle through, is like, am I willing to say this? Do I hold this view tightly enough to put it out there? It's not just like a joke at somebody else's expense. But is this something I'm willing to say and get the pushback from that? And so those are the questions I have to answer before I do something like that.
I like that. I think the comedy approach is bold, and so I admire it just for being bold. But I think that my approach is maybe curiosity. So maybe I would experience less backlash just for being curious as opposed to being
opinionated.
Yeah. But I am also, that's definitely a question I ask myself. My episode with the author of the book Pure that I interviewed, that one was a little bit scary for me, but not enough to not do it. But it was a little scary just because of the culture that I grew up in, being so saturated in purity and modest women, and your purity is your salvation-esque like messages that we were taught as women growing up. And I was a little bit afraid of maybe people's opinions or thoughts on that episode, just because I know so many people from back home that taught me all those things were listening to what I had to say. But I agree with you, Jonathan, that if I believe it enough that I don't really care what anyone else thinks. And I don't mean that rudely. I just mean it like we can agree to disagree. Like, I don't know.
I honestly, Jonathan, you said something I never even thought about while doing the podcast. Is that like I I don't get paid for my podcast? Like I think I looked at my sheet. I think I made like 0.03 cents since I started. And I was like, yeah, I'm winning.
Hey, that's pretty good.
That's really good. That's more than me.
But then like the cost of actually uploading, it's like, well, I'm still in the negative. But
Yeah.
I never even thought about the idea of like that, like my boss might hear this or a future boss might listen to it. And I tell everybody, and I think part of it is that like I'm very much me on the podcast. So I tell everybody at work, it's like, yeah, go listen to it. I don't care. And I don't think I've said anything differently at work or just in my regular life than I would normally say on the podcast. Where I get a lot of fear from is like what I post on social media. I'm constantly like, all right, don't respond to anybody's comments on whatever so-and-so said. Don't jump on this, like on that bandwagon of like, you'll see the whole stream of comments that someone made a political post on and you want to jump in on it. And I intentionally don't, not because like, I don't think that I think I'm too small to get canceled. And even if I was big enough, I think because like we own our own platforms, right? Like I'm not part of any networks. It's going to be like, even if this is huge, it would still be hard for me to get canceled because like I still own all the content myself. What would be dangerous for me is that like for you two, I had gone on a huge rant, like and said something super racist and you guys didn't know about it, which obviously I would never do. But like, let's say that happened and then you guys came on the podcast, you didn't know who I was. I would worry that you're unintentionally co-signing who I am, right? You're unintentionally like saying something. So for my guests, out of protection of my guests, it's like I'm going to be on my best behavior on the public platform because I'm scared that like, what if Felicia, like everybody starts hating on Felicia? It's like, I can't believe you would do Marvin's podcast. Like that's such a dangerous thing. Or Jonathan is like, I can't believe you guys are friends. Like, why would, and you're like, dude, like he just invited me to his podcast. Like I just want to promote myself. It's like, I don't want to, I don't know. I worry about that a lot.
No, that's fair. I share those same concerns with trying to be, not step on anyone's toes intentionally. I mean, I think it's a real fear. Like I said, like if it goes up to my CEO that I said something like outrageous, and I don't personally think I'm like got any controversial views, but I don't like, the thing that bothers me about the cancel culture is that it's, so if somebody breaks the law and they go to prison, they serve their time and they're released back into society, we've all agreed on like, this is the law, this is the crime, fits the punishment, you serve your time. With cancel culture, it's just like, go away forever. Like you're done. And I think there's some people that deserve it. Like Bill Cosby, I hope he never sees the light of day again, like just go away forever. But there's other people that like, oops, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to say that. Or it was like 20 years ago where everybody was fine with it then. And they've owned up to it. And they're like, I wouldn't do that again. So that's the problem I have, is that you do have people that are quick to jump on you for one little thing that you did, or, oh, you went on so-and-so's podcast. You're horrible. But like, to me, that works against it. So let's say you're a super liberal person and you go on a super conservative show. I would think like if I was somebody like, or vice versa, I feel like you're presenting your argument to a more than one crowd, more than just your choir. I would applaud that, and that's kind of what I want to do with my podcast too, is let's have a conversation. Let's engage, get off Facebook, get off these memes that probably aren't even factually correct, and give people some grace, and let's discover this stuff together. So for me, it's like kind of with what Felicia said, like the curiosity factor is big for me, and just trying to stay humble and like admit where I'm wrong, or admit where I don't know everything. I think that can save a lot of people. The issue I see a lot of people run into is they're like, this is what I believe, I'm 100% right, anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. And those are the people, like, when they get canceled, nobody really cares. And so there's a toxicity to it all that I'm mindful of, but I also give people a lot of grace with like, people make mistakes. We do it every day. And to act like you don't, and that you're going to cancel somebody for not being as perfect as you are, I mean, it's just kind of stupid to me.
Yeah.
Drop the mic. Except don't.
Yeah.
That's really good.
This is a $10 microphone.
Now, so you, as far as like any guests, have you guys had any guests that come on your podcast that you didn't agree with yet?
That's
No.
a good question.
Not yet.
Do you mean like we disagree on a topic, or like just somebody like I'm like politically opposed to, or
Yeah, like either or. Like there's a topic and you two just did not see like eye to eye on it yet.
oh yeah, well there's somebody I had on that I disagree with what they're doing on Facebook. Um, like they're posting a lot of stuff, and I recorded the episode because we're close, and they've done a lot of good things that I was like, oh, this would be a great episode to talk about, like this work you've done. And then it's literally sitting in the can right now where I'm like, do I put this out there or do I not? And honestly, I don't know. I've been talking to my wife about it. I'm like, I like what this guy did in this area, but this area I'm 100% opposed to it. And so what if people click around, they go to his page? So it's kind of what we're talking about. I think I am going to end up sharing it, but it does give me pause of like, oof, it's like you're making it hard on me, man. But at the same time, nobody really listens to my show, so like the odds of it, like, you know, Twitter blowing up on me are very, very small. But yeah, there's people I disagree with, like, I don't know about that, but it's nothing like, you know, I'm vehemently opposed to or anything like that. I probably wouldn't have them on the show if there's somebody I just can't stand.
Gotcha. So, okay. Question, since we're on the topic of guests, if you could have a dream guest on your, like, you could pick anybody on your show, who would it be?
You sent us the questions yesterday, and I've been trying to think of the answer for that all day, because it depends on like what, I guess it depends on what the subject is, because, and it also depends on what version of myself I'm operating out of, like teenage obsession that I would like freak out if they were on my show. I don't know, like Taylor Swift, anyone in Paramore, like all my favorite musicians. Or if it's like right now, AOC, hello, or like, I don't know. That's such a good question. Or all of my favorite authors. I don't know. Okay, wait, you know what? Jimmy Fallon, or
It's a good one.
shoot, I just had it. Jack Antonoff. He does Bleachers, and he can do no wrong in my eyes. So those are my answers.
Wait, what is Bleachers?
Oh, okay. What?
I don't know what it is either.
What, you guys? It's my favorite band. He's a producer as well. He's produced a lot of Lorde. He just produced the Dixie Chicks album. He's like all over the musical spectrum. He's done so many of Taylor Swift's albums, but Bleachers, it's just, it's so good. It's like very real lyrics paired with music that is anthematic in the sense of you just feel very alive when you listen to his songs.
Nice.
Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, I'm interested because I like Paramore. I saw them they were they were just like the up and coming. Some of my friend was like, "Yo, you got to go we're at a festival." So my dream guest I think would be Dave Chappelle. Is somebody I'm like, I just love to talk to you. Jon Stewart, and
that's a good one.
Yeah, just because I like, he's one of those guys, like, even if I don't agree with every political thing, whatever, I love the way he thinks and processes things. I think he's a pretty rational guy. Kind of looking for the absurdity. Same with Chappelle. And then probably Bono. U2's my favorite band, been a favorite band for forever. So I'd love to talk to Bono.
If you could ask Bono one thing, what would you ask him?
Have you found what you're looking for? No. One thing. Oh gosh. I don't even know that. Dang, I'm not ready for that question. I have many questions.
Sorry.
But yeah, I like the way Bono thinks as well. So I guess the people I would like to have on is people I respect on how they process and how they think and how they express that to everybody else too. Because they're three people that I've gleaned a lot from their work.
Gotcha. For me and wife were talking about this. There's a comedian who is not like PC at all, and I don't agree with most of his stances, and some of his jokes kind of make me cringe, but to me he's the best, like as far as actual like stand-up abilities, he's the top of my eyes. His name's Andrew Schultz, and
heard him.
And so like, yeah, that's okay. But like he's But yeah, so he's been my dream guest. And so like a lot of the reason why I podcast when I started writing stand-up comedy, he was like the inspiration behind a lot of that.
Oh,
So
awesome.
he would be my number one pick. But so both of you, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, like Felicia, I know you do music. Jonathan, Tony, you do what feels like everything. You got like you blog. You got what, like 12 books out. You know,
Uh,
um,
12 copies of the 2 books. Yeah.
but
There's a pile of them
you.
over there that didn't sell. Just so if anybody
Oh,
wants.
really? Um, and then I mean, I was just saying, but you do write. You're a great author. You write a lot. And do you still do music and stand up?
Yeah, I try to. I'm actually working on some kids' music now. I'm gonna submit to Sesame Street as
That's
my
so
life has
cool.
become. Yeah. So we got some big hits about dogs coming out pretty soon. Hopefully that'll. Actually, I'm recording tomorrow with my friend. I was like, dude, Sesame Street takes submissions. We got to try this because I got a 1-year-old daughter, and I'm like, there's got to be some really funny songs because I don't want to. We've avoided the Baby Shark thing. I told my wife, I'm like, I want to listen to songs that I think are good. Maybe I just write my own or something. So that's the goal right now. Sorry.
That's genius.
But so do you guys have a preference in podcasting or your other creative outlets?
You want to? Okay. Yes. Well, podcasting came because I think I failed at everything else. I'm like, well, I'm gonna make people listen to me, even if they don't listen to me. I like to think that they're listening to me. Yeah, it's fun. It's been, honestly, I'm not somebody that consumed podcasts for years. I'd read books, and then I love audiobooks is something I've really like. That's where I spend most of my time. And I have friends that are like, "Oh, you gotta check out this podcast," and they would send me a podcast, and it'd be like 5,000 episodes. I'm like, it was just almost like too much to handle. But I really like the podcast format because I did not realize how many people just churn through podcasts like all day, every day. So it's been kind of cool to come into that network versus like writing books. I mean, that would take like, a year to a year and a half for some of them, or for the one. And then you put them out there, and a lot of people just don't read books. And it's a very slow process where like a book, you have to write it, edit it, produce it. People have to buy it. They have to get it. They have to have time to read it, to consume, versus like a podcast. It's on their phone. Boom. Like the next day, like they can know. So I like that element of it. I like the currentness of it. But it's a little harder to often feel like, did I say everything I wanted to say? Am I happy with that? Because you kind of get, especially in the interview format, you get one shot with people, and or just in that moment, versus like when I write a blog or I'm working up, I mean, I can look at that as many times as I want, make sure it's clear and edited, versus that. So I like the currentness of podcasts, but it's a little scarier just being like, well, here it is, and it's out there. But I've enjoyed it a lot too. So, and I've been getting into more podcasts since doing one as well.
Gotcha.
I feel like I'm rethinking my answer now that you said your answer, but I think I will always love music the most. So I think that is, I don't prefer one of, okay, yes, I prefer music over podcasting if I have to pick, but I like also the currency of podcasting because, yeah, music, you're putting so much money into it. With podcasting, you just buy your equipment and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
And you can put it out immediately. And you can put music out immediately too if you have paid everyone that helped you on time. So I like the currency of podcasts, but I love writing more than anything else. So I guess if you're making me pick music.
Sounds good. Let's see. One last question for you guys, if you do not mind.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like podcasting, there's a million podcasts out there right now. Especially, I mean, you kind of touched on this, Felicia. Like, I launched my podcast partially due to quarantine. So did you, and so did so many other people I know. Are you guys Are you intentionally trying to stay competitive as far as podcasting?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not because my computer is ancient and I have literally like 6 episodes that I could just drop if my editing software would cooperate, and it's not. But I'm getting a new computer very soon. Hopefully by the time this airs, there will have been a lot more episodes dropped.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I would love to be competitive. I would love to have a market. It's just, I think that's one of the hardest things about, and you guys probably experienced this too, is like getting your work outside of your friends' network. I mean, and right now, most of the people that listen are friends. Maybe we have a few people that have like recommended it and somebody's heard it. And so it's hard to be, and there's so many podcasts, but I experienced this with books as well. It's just like, the problem, so with books in particular, like it used to be, and it's similar to music, you had to get a producer or a publication company and all this stuff, like an agent, and then there's only so many people that can make books, and then Amazon makes it to where anybody can write a book and produce a book. And similar with like Spotify, like you don't have to get on the radio anymore, you can get your music out that way, or YouTube. And so that's a benefit because we can all do what we want to do, but it also brings with it so much clutter. It brings with it so many more people that are doing exactly what you're doing. And I've realized there are a lot of successful authors, podcasters, musicians, whatever, that are actually not that good at what they do, but they're good marketers. And that's what is most disheartening to me, is just like, how do they have like 1 billion followers? And like, it's nothing like groundbreaking. It's just, but they're doing something that I have not been able to crack. Or probably the more accurate thing is, I'm not as good as I this as I hoped I would be. And maybe I just need to quit. But yeah, so it's kind of discouraging. But that's why, to come back to I think what we said earlier, is just like, I do this because I enjoy it and I believe in it. And I think if I was ever going to give a speech at a high school, like for some reason, they're like, oh, we got a podcaster that's coming, the graduating class of 2004 is back. And I would just tell them, like, everybody's going to tell you to pursue your passions, and that's good. You should pursue them. But don't expect your passions to pay you. Go get a good day job where you can do your passions on the side. It doesn't matter if anybody likes them or not. And because you'll be able to do those. And won't it be great to like feed your family and be able to produce a podcast at night? Wouldn't that be a great thing? And so that's what's been good for me, is being able to do my passions and do a job that I tolerate and I kind of enjoy now. But one time I got consumed with like the idea that like I wasn't a successful writer. I've been rejected by like all the literary agents and publication companies. And I told my wife one day, I'm like, I'm done. I'm just like quit. Like, it's too much work. It's too much effort. And I just can't do this. And it's gotten nowhere. Like, nobody cares. Like, my mom likes it. I mean, whatever. And so like, she's like, okay. And then I quit. And I used to write in the mornings, and I woke up and I'm like, I'm not writing this morning, whatever. And I was so depressed. Like, it was just like, you could see it in my face. And my wife was like, I think you need your writing more than anybody else needs your writing. And that stuck with me. And so that kind of changed something in me. I would still love to have fans and like have a following where people that, care about what I'm doing and putting this hard work into. But if anything, I've been learning from it, and I'm experiencing things, and I'm enjoying just talking with friends. I'm enjoying producing something. And I'm like, maybe my grandkids or my kids will consume it one day, and they'll have all these things on file of their grandpa. Like, I don't have that much info on my grandparents. I don't know much about their lives. And my grandkids will be like, I have way too much information about my grandfather. He talked way too much. And that makes me happy to know that I could even annoy them, 50 years from now. That'd be nice.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on, both of you. Like I said, I'm real selective with my guests. Like, if I don't truly enjoy the content that they produce, like, I just don't want to have them on. And that's not a diss to them. It's just that I just want to talk to people I find interesting. And like, I subscribe to both of your podcasts, and I follow you both. So you guys both do amazing work. So I'm just honored that you're here. 10 years from now, I hope all three of us have a podcast with millions of followers, and we can do a 10-year anniversary of like, hey, look, started, this is where, but anyways,
yeah.
I can't wait to see what directions that both of you guys are going to go in. I feel like you both will be huge someday. I really do. So, anyways, if you guys want to go ahead, like, where can they find you? Where can they listen to your podcast? Where can they just, send snail mail if you're comfortable with that or not, for obvious reasons?
They can find mine on most streaming platforms. Maybe by the time this airs, Apple will finally have uploaded my
yeah.
episodes. But Spotify is the main place to go. Anchor.com
Oh, use
or
Anchor too?
something like that. But yeah.
Anchor.fm? Yeah, Anchor's
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah. But Instagram, Human Entropy Podcast. That's all I got.
Excellent. Mine is just the Jonathan Tony podcast. It is on Apple. Apple takes a while to get you posted, so it's
Yeah.
right
How
off.
long did it take you?
Weeks. Like Google had it up like the next day. Spotify is real quick. For some reason, Apple, it takes some weeks to I guess, approve. I don't know why. You think they'd be the quickest? They're the first ones to do it.
Right. I mean, Spotify was up within like 20 minutes. And
yeah.
I released all my first episodes in April, and none of those are on Apple Podcasts. I'm like,
huh? Oh, since April?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, not to brag, but mine got uploaded on Apple like the next day.
Then.
Well, we're not all getting the red carpet rolled out. But yeah, so I have John the Tony podcast on Spotify and all that stuff, and then also have Dinner Guest Rejects, which is the comedy one, and then
that's
Instagram.
A great name. I love that name.
Yeah, it's a fun one, and then Instagram is just at Jonathan Tony. So I don't really have a website. I had a website, and it just was like nobody's going to websites, just so there's no point.
Well, guys, you can find me you have a
website after I just.
Actually, I do. So actually, quick announcement real quick. It's not technically my website. I am currently working on producing my first feature film that I'll be starring in. And so the website for that is called vlogthemovie.com. So it means a lot for you guys to go check it out. If you have any questions about, that's one of the projects I'm working on right now. So hopefully we'll get that, filming sooner rather than later. Filming a movie takes forever, so we'll see how this goes. But and then also just for my personal information, if you guys want to go ahead and hit me up on Instagram at theonlymarvingm. And then for all the listeners, thank you so much for listening to this. Go ahead, subscribe so you can listen to more episodes, comment on what you think, and go ahead and subscribe to Jonathan Tony and Felicia Parker's podcast. They're amazing. I promise you guys, you won't be let down. Anyways, peace. Love you guys.